while President Trump is facing a scandal that's overwhelming this first foreign trip of his term. Total condemnation for the bid to get a $400 million jet from Qatar. Conservatives rebuking it as a blatant grift. Elected Republicans opposing this and really trying to duck what they see as obvious political blowback for something they want no part of. Democrats blasting it, of course. And then many ethics and nonpartisan experts agreeing this is actually, numerically, the worst attempted corruption in the history of the White House. Those are just some of the headlines battering Trump during the trip as he lands today in the country offering this controversial and possibly illegal gift, Qatar. And in one sign the entire plan might already be on the rocks, neither side publicly addressed this Trump controversy over the plane as he deboarded a different plane. Now, for many Western democracies, Qatar is seen as a pretty extreme and challenging dictatorship to deal with. It runs as an autocratic monarchy. They have crackdowns on human rights, limits on free speech, and, of course, the press over there. They fund Al Jazeera, and many U.S. experts view that as partly a tool of foreign influence, sometimes cutting against U.S. interests. They also work with the U.S. military, so it's a relationship that's complicated, nuanced to be sure, but it complicates American interests because this is a regime that does Iran diplomacy, that hosts a Taliban office in Doha. And this is not news to Donald Trump, by the way. Back around the first term, he was blasting this same Qatar regime as what he called a super terror funder. Qatar clearly wants to play ball. Qatar would rather pay money, which it gathers from its resources and people in a system where they have no accountability. They're a monarchy. They'd rather take that money to buy influence than change any of the policies that the U.S. has a problem with. Indeed, Qatar has been trying to transform its reputation, the Times reports, by spending millions on lobbyists in Washington, including Pam Bondi, now Trump's attorney general. Now, Trump's visit, the Times notes, is a part of this wider success for a very pricey influence strategy for a relatively controversial autocratic monarchy. And their strategy appears to be working. You have this regime trying to buy their way to some sort of better reputation or treatment by the United States. That's the problem underlying the whole jet gift. And it's also why, separate from the ethics, we're not getting an offer of a jet for our politicians from Canada. Qatar has more cleanup to do. And so even apart from the obvious ethics, which should have made this whole thing dead on arrival or not cleared for takeoff, if you prefer, even beyond that, Qatar has faced skepticism from American leaders for its actions on moral grounds and on the normal foreign policy grounds, that they're adverse to U.S. interests. And so here, instead of facing the normal pressure of possibly changing those policies or just paying the consequences, the evidence and the influence campaign suggests what everyone's concerned about, that Qatar is trying to corrupt the United States process from inside, using or abusing money and influence to buy a closer relationship than the facts would otherwise warrant. Now, this is according to multiple administrations and experts that have previously determined that Qatar, at a minimum, should be kept at arm's length, that you don't just embrace a monarchy like this, or you can dial back to the Trump quote I played you, or his own focus on the terror funding. And that was back before all the Qatar money offers were coming in. The facts and the offer from Qatar suggest that this is not about what's best for America. It's about a foreign effort to make Qatar great, to take a turn on the Reagan phrase that Trump rebooted, of course, for his campaigns. And this isn't a new or creative type of corruption to try to make Qatar great. It's actually one of the oldest things in the book. The founders of this country knew that there was always going to be a risk for the United States as a democracy with rotating leaders who don't just hold on to money like a monarchy, that they might someday have people in important positions who were basically weak or greedy. And the founders were worried that weak or greedy leaders could get bought off, could get compromised, even by something so easily and noticeable as blatant as a foreign gift. And so keep that in mind when you remember the Trump family is doing the kind of double dealing with these deals in the exact countries that Trump has prioritized on this first visit. And so to connect the dots tonight, the founders did not leave it up to any one leader to decide when to take gifts. They permanently limited any such foreign gifts in our Constitution. You may have heard reference to this recently given the news this week. And if a foreign country or king, which actually applies given that Qatar is run through a monarchy, if a king tried offering any gift that wasn't, say, for the people or the country of the United States, but was actually just to try to corrupt one person, a politician or leader, the founders were going to ban that or make it very hard to do. The classic example would be France gifting the Statue of Liberty, the beautiful, beautiful statue you see there, for the U.S. centennial. That was a gift to the country, of course, not to any one politician. It is indeed a public statue in New York that many people see still, all these years later, as a great iconic tourist attraction, which they can visit. But remember, even that was approved by Congress. And it wasn't a gift for the politician. As for a king who would try to give a huge gift to an officer or even a president, well, I'll remind you, U.S. officers under the Constitution cannot accept any president from any king or foreign state without the consent of Congress. The founders viewed it as obvious that Congress would never approve big, lavish personal gifts, let alone gigantic ones, and thus that limit meant you would have a check. A rough count suggests the majority of senators today are already on record against this gift plan, when you have the Democrats and several Republican senators who've already spoken out. So it looks like by that whip count, Trump can't even clear this constitutional hurdle, and that's even if his attorney general and former Qatar lobbyist says she likes the idea. So that's the rule. Now, Trump could be pushed to drop this plan from all of the blowback before it's even tested in court. It is still significant because it shows you where his priorities are. It shows you what he's trying to do. It shows you in the clearest possible sense that this personal enrichment matters more than what the U.S. might get. Again, if you use the Statue of Liberty example, why not give the $400 million if it's for the taking to some public project? Why not? Because it's not about you. It's not about the oath he took. It's clearly about him. And because, as I mentioned this in our coverage here, because of the fact that it's so physical and visible and it's a jet, it seems to be having more blowback, especially among Republicans, than other self-interested maneuvers, certainly more than the cryptocurrency, which feels kind of, hard to track. For his part, Trump has defensively argued that taking foreign gifts is, he argues, somehow, quote, smart. Well, the Constitution, the U.S. military, the CIA policies, they all disagree. If you're defending the United States, if you're a general or a CIA spy, it's not considered smart to pocket the gifts, which, by the way, are obviously offered in all sorts of ways, and which tough, strong public servants are supposed to resist, because you don't want to be compromised. Trump is now arguing that the Gulf states have bigger planes, maybe greater planes, and he wants the U.S. to kind of keep up, he says, even if that means having what would become the first ever Qatar Force One, if you will. This really is his argument. It's his new talking point in an interview where even Fox News felt the need to bring up the scandal.
When you land and you see Saudi Arabia and you see UAE and you see Qatar and you see all these, and they have these brand new Boeing 747s mostly, and you see ours next to it, this is like a totally different plane. It's much smaller. We're the United States of America. I believe that we should have the most impressive plane.
Yes. We've gone from what the rules are to the self-dealing to the sort of general statement that we should have the most impressive plane. First of all, if you think about what's been going on with inflation and the prices up and the tariff war, we don't see a lot of evidence that most Americans are thinking about who has the larger plane when they land in various foreign capitals. Second of all, if you want a bigger plane, you run the United States. You can go down to Congress and get that legislated. You can do it without any national security or espionage risk. It's a classic Trump deflection where he starts trying to get people to talk about that and the size of planes instead of the real issue, which is you have a leader who 110 days in has been busy doing business deals with these very countries, making money with his family, selling a meme crypto coin that came out of thin air, getting transaction fees off that, working with the richest guy in the world, Elon Musk. Seems like a lot of stuff that has nothing to do with your life, your well-being, and how your economy is affecting your life and family. Now, this Trump jet, if you are keeping track, would dwarf literally every type of little gift that any president has ever taken, which, as you can see, are down to the tune of a couple $100K for Biden, Bush $1 million. A lot of those things are held in various public presentation areas. None of them involve a $400 million gift. NBC also reports that there'd be a high cost to getting this thing done. So when you take it all together, you don't choose when you follow the news and politics. We don't get to choose which issues break through. Indeed, there are people who are critics of Trump and human rights experts and Democratic activists who say, of all the things in these first 110 days, this is where we've heard more from Republican senators more quickly than picking up students off the street and allegedly appearing to target people based on their free speech and at times sending people to the wrong foreign prison and feeling like, what is due process in America anymore? Even to just name one bundle of issues. We're talking about the jet. But here's the thing. We don't choose. We live through it together. And certain people have certain reasons why they're more skeptical of Trump on this, that, or the other thing. It is very clear from the Republican response and the outrage and what now looks like an effort by Donald Trump to get out from under parts of this. This one broke through because of the sheer, blatant, physical, undeniable grift.